So, can we ask you about the big news about the new book?
About the book with David Levithan?
Yes, yes.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay,
This is
okay.
the first time I get to talk about it. So yes, thank you for asking.
Great.
We are live.
Hello, everyone. This is a very special evening because we are together with wonderful Jennifer Niven, our beloved author. And I am very happy to introduce you my co-host, Ana Dragomir. She is a young reader. She already wrote three children's books, and I'm very proud of her accomplishments. So Jennifer Niven, welcome to Romania again online.
Thank you so much. It's an honor to be here.
It's an honor.
And I will let Anna to start our interview.
So hi, Jennifer. It's so nice to see you again and have you here at the second edition of FestivalYA. It's a wonderful opportunity for readers all around the world to meet you, ask questions. I think we are going to talk mostly about Breathless, which is your book. Here it is in Romanian.
Oh, so beautiful.
And everything writing, reading. I read your books. I loved them. There is a uniqueness to your voice in writing that actually makes the reader feel something, get emotional, cry, but like in a good way. And it shows the bright side of the world, even if your characters go through bad things. It shows the bright side that there are bright places in the world, which I find very beautiful. So my first question to you is, what made you write Breathless, and how can your books help people around the world?
First, thank you so much for those beautiful words. And I'm so honored to be here with you and these wonderful readers. So Breathless is actually a very personal story. It kind of in the vein of All the Bright Places, that was a very personal story. And when I was thinking of my next YA book, I was remembering when I was 18, my parents separated, and it felt like the world was kind of pulled out from beneath my feet in that instant, which was, I will never forget how that felt. And that summer, instead of getting to spend time with my best friend before college, I went with my mother, like we went away from my hometown and my dad and everything I knew in my home and my best friend. And it was just this very it was a summer when I really had to become an adult for the first time in a lot of ways. And I had to learn to build this like floor beneath my feet again, the one that had disappeared. And so I started writing about that summer. And it was very personal. I mean, a lot of the things that happen in the book, Claude, the heroine of the book, her parents split up right before her high school graduation. And she and her mother moved to this remote Georgia island where she has no cell service. She can't contact her best friend. And she feels like her whole world has just shattered. Of course, there's a boy and she falls for this boy. And this is another part of the story that became very personal for me, only as an adult, not a teen. But when I was working on the story and researching it, I spent time on this island off the coast of Georgia. And that's where I met my now husband. And a lot of the adventures we had in the book, or we had in real life, I put in the book for Claude to have with Jeremiah. So it comes from those two places in my life. And in terms of how I hope my books help people, I know that I hear daily from readers around the world who just say, thank you so much for letting me know that I matter and that I'm not alone. And I think that this is one of the things I've always loved about reading, that I still love about reading, is that books can remind us that we aren't alone. They can reach into us and reach out to us. And I just love knowing that I can say to my readers on the page, you matter and you're seen and you're not alone and you are loved.
Great. The second question that I have is, what is the main theme of your new novel, Breathless, and what should readers take from it?
I think for me, it's interesting because when I first started writing it, it was more about, it was kind of, I felt like a more modern day Judy Blume's Forever. And that book was like dealt with teen sexuality kind of head on. And it was very honest and like very forward thinking, especially during the time it was written. And I felt like we needed a more modern version of that, especially for young women, because I don't read a lot of YA that is sex positive or that I feel doesn't celebrate how powerful and empowered you can be to make certain decisions. And so that's what it really started out as. But I think the message became, what happens when your world changes in an instant and you don't have any say over that and you feel helpless, and you have to rely on others for certain things, but mostly you have to rely on yourself to build another floor. And I feel like it's interesting because of the pandemic. I wrote Breathless before the pandemic, but certainly since that's happened, it kind of underscores that point even more, I guess that message even more, because I think we all relate in some way to what it's like to have our world change in an instant. And then where do we go from there?
I take it from here. You said already that Breathless is in many ways even more personal than all the bright places. And I found an interview where you said that Claude's relationship with her mother is inspired by your relationship with your mother. And could you tell us more about that? And maybe could you share with us a memory with her mother?
Yes, absolutely. I would be honored because my mother was just my favorite person in the world. And she unfortunately died unexpectedly 6.5 years ago. One of the wonderful things about being a writer is that you can resurrect people that you've lost in real life. You can resurrect them on the page. So I knew with Claude and her mother, I wanted to put just some semblance of our relationship in there with them. And because it was such a special relationship for me, and it formed who I am, not just as a person, but as a writer as well, because my mother was also a writer. And I think there's so many wonderful memories of my mom, but she was so brilliant, but she was also like knew the importance of joy, and she was very joyful, and she was very silly, and we could just be so silly and start laughing and probably just forget like what it was that had actually inspired the laughter to begin with. But one time she went with me on a research trip, and we used to do this for each other. I would go with her to research her books. She would come with me to research mine. And we were in the National Archives in Ottawa, Canada. And I was researching this nonfiction book I was working on, which was my first book. And we got so tickled about something that we were reading that they had to warn us so many times to just keep it down. And we were doing this very serious scholarly work, but we're having such a wonderful time with each other. And there are just so many wonderful memories like that. And I think another one is that when I was little, she would have writing time like in my childhood routine, and she would write at her big desk, and then I would write at my little desk. And she taught me to find the story in everything. And that's something I've never forgotten.
That's a beautiful image. Anna, would you ask the next?
What makes the love story in Breathless different from other love stories in YA novels?
I feel like at least for my YA novels, I feel like it's a more adult love story in that these are two people who kind of come together. I mean, like other characters I've written, they certainly both have flaws. They have things that they're not talking about right away at first. And one thing I wanted to do, because this is something my husband and I did, was when Claude and Maya meet, they kind of say to each other, okay, this is me. Like these are all the things that I'm not proud of, and these are the things that you should know. And they put it out there, which is something that Justin and I did like the first day we met. We're like, okay, here I am. So you don't have any surprises down the road. And there's just this honesty. I think because Claude and Jeremiah feel like they only have a summer, there's a freedom there in the way they talk to each other and open up to each other. And also Claude, one of the ways in which she finds her floor again is to make certain decisions about her body, having sex for the first time. And I feel like their relationship is very empowering for each other.
Thank you. We have a question from Luana. Luana, please.
Hi, I am very nervous to speak to you.
Be nervous? Oh, you're lovely.
Because it's an honor for me to be in your presence. You're a huge inspiration for me. And since All the Bright Places is one of my favorite books ever, and I've read it so many times, and every single time it was just as special as the first time I read it, I was wondering what was the process of creating Finch and how you felt when you had to write the ending for him, because it was heartbreaking for me, and it's heartbreaking every single time.
Oh, Luana, thank you for the question. And I'm so sorry for the heartbreak.
It's all right.
It's interesting because I had a young writer ask me, how did you write All the Bright Places without crying? And I said, oh, I cried all the time as I was writing it. Just in order to let the reader feel what you want and need them to feel, you have to feel those things too. And for me, Finch was very personal. He was actually inspired by a boy I loved and lost years ago. And I knew when I was writing him that I wanted to pay tribute to this boy, but at the same time, Finch very quickly became Finch on the page. So now when I think of Finch, I think of Finch. I don't think of this boy I loved. First, I think of Finch himself because he became this real person to me. And writing so much of that story was really, really difficult, and it was really hard. And I told myself going into it, especially when you're writing about issues and subjects like this for young adults, you have to be especially honest and responsible in doing it. So you want to make sure it's as authentic as possible and not romanticized. And so I just tried to write out of my heart and what I felt for this boy and what I knew from my experience from loving him. And it was heartbreaking, but it also was cathartic.
Okay, Bianca.
Hi, I'm so happy to see you.
Hi,
My question for you is, what inspired you to write All the Bright Places?
that's a great question. So I had many books before All the Bright Places. All the Bright Places was my 8th book, but it was my first young adult book. And I had this wonderful literary agent who had seen me he'd been with me from the beginning of my career. And the spring of 2013, he died very suddenly and unexpectedly. And he was the only person in his agency. So the entire agency went away when he died. And I had to find a new agent. And they all wanted to know what I was thinking of working on next, because I just finished the last in a series of adult novels. And so I had always been wanting to write YA, but I had never really taken it, I'd never taken that plunge and done it. And I kept thinking about the last conversation I had with my agent, which was, he said, whatever you write next, I want you to write it with all your heart, even if it terrifies you. And that, I knew what that was right away. It was the story of this boy I loved who inspired Finch. And so I didn't tell anyone I was working on it. And I sat down just to see if I could write it. And I thought, as a way to honor my agent and friend, I would try this story. And it came out in about 6 weeks. I wrote it, which is the fastest I've ever written a book. And then I gave it to my first choice for agent, and she wanted to represent it. And then we sold it, and the rest is history.
Thank you. Cartea Mariei.
Hello, it's very nice to meet you.
Hi.
I also had a question about Finch, but it was already said. So I have a more of a life question.
Okay.
I wanted to know, how did you discover writing? How did you know that you like writing? I don't know.
That's a great question. Are you a writer?
No, I'm 13. I'm young. I'm trying to find my career, and I love reading. So
That's good. I, when I was your age, I was trying out all different career ideas. And I think because my mother was also a writer, when she found out I loved to make up stories on the page or tell stories verbally, she always encouraged that. But she always said, like, she would have encouraged me no matter what I wanted to do. It just happened that I really loved to write and make up these like grand stories all the time. And so she encouraged me to write. And it's interesting because I loved it so much. It was the thing I was best at. I loved it. And I had this mother who was an author, but because I had a mom who was an author, I could see how demanding it could be and also how stressful it could be sometimes. So I remember in college, when I went off to college, I said, okay, but I'm not going to be a writer because it is way too difficult. So I'll be something else, anything else. And then inevitably, I couldn't not write. So I came back to it.
thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Emilia.
Hi, it's such a wonderful time. I'm so happy that I'm finally meeting you. I wanted to see you last year, but I couldn't. So my question is also a light question because I see you're getting so many serious questions. I just want to lighten up the mood. So if you could hang out with any of your characters, with which one do you think you would get the most, like the best and the least good, like the different? Which
love
one is the most different from you?
That is such a great question. And thank you so much for your question. I'm so glad you're here this year. I think I would like to hang out with probably with Libby. I love her. I love her energy. I'm working right now on the Whole Damn Universe movie script. So I'm writing that and I'm getting to spend time with Jack and Libby all over again. And it's amazing. And I just am reminded again how much I admire Libby. And in terms of the person I think I would have the least kind of like would be the most different from me, this is interesting, but I think Violet actually, because it's interesting because Violet in a lot of ways is me, or certainly was me at a certain time in my life. But I feel like we wouldn't have as much in common as I would with maybe like Claude or Jeremiah or even Jack. So I think Violet. It's such a great question because it makes me think like, oh, who would it be?
Thank you so much for your answer.
Thank you.
Thank you. Andreea Voinescu.
Hi, I'm again so thankful to be here. You look all so lovely tonight.
Thank you.
of this evening. Sorry. So my question is, what would you say is your interesting writing first? I'm really curious about this one.
About the writing.
About your writing curve, your interesting writing curve.
In terms of like the process?
Yes.
I think that, thank you so much for the question, by the way. I think for me, like one thing that I really love to do is create playlists for my characters. I also do that for the books themselves. Music is always very influential for me, and it's just so wonderful because it evokes so much feeling, and you can step away from your desk or your computer and then come back to it and just put on the playlist and drop immediately back into the story or the character's voice. And that's something I discovered with All the Bright Places. It's something I really felt like I needed to do to keep Finch and Violet's voices very separate and different from each other. So I created like Finch's playlist is very different from Violet's. And then I also, I tend to write the story in music form first. So I tend to do a playlist for the whole story so that I can have like the feeling of the scenes and the beats of the story, if that makes any sense. And it's something, as I said, I learned with All the Right Places, and I've taken forward into all the other books that I've written. And I used to not write to music because the words would distract me, but now I find some of my best writing I do if I'm listening to music with words, because it makes me think less about it and worry less about it and just put it on the paper. I don't know if that answers your question.
Yes, and thank you so much.
Oh, thank you so much.
Flavia, Ioana.
Yeah, I'm here. I just want to say that I have Holding Up the Universe right here. It is the first book that I read from him, and it made me want to read more and more. And I discovered Breathless, I guess, a few months ago. I didn't know that it was out, and it just came at the right time.
Good. Oh, I'm so glad to hear that.
And I'm so happy that I can talk to you right now. I don't know if you know how important it is for me, but it is. And I cannot express this into words. And I'm so happy to hear that you're writing the script for Holding Up the Universe. Like, I'm really happy for that.
Yay.
And I wanted to ask you, how is it for you to put your book into a movie? Like, for me, it's really interesting the scenarios that you have to make and put it into image, but it's different, the movie from the book.
Definitely. And thank you so much for that question. And also, I think you expressed yourself beautifully about everything. So I just so appreciate it. It's so different to write a movie script because I think the instinct is to keep every scene from the book. Of course, ideally you would do that, but there's not as much room on the movie screen as there is on the page. So inevitably some scenes and storylines, even characters have to go away. And that, I think, for me, writing All the Bright Places, it was such a learning experience. I had gone to film school and I had earned my master's degree in screenwriting, but I hadn't really done it for a long time. So getting to write the All the Right Places script was amazing, but I wanted to keep everything. And I remember the director was like, we can't make a 15-hour movie, Jennifer. And I was like, why not? I would love that, but obviously you can't. Also, it's a collaboration. And unlike, writing a book where it's just you and the page for months at a time until you ever show it to anyone else, from the beginning, you are always getting input. So it's constant input from your producers, director, actors, like whomever is involved. And that is something that, was certainly an adjustment as well. But I do love that. It's exciting to hear other people who are just as invested as you are in the story. And it's also like really exciting to hear their perspectives on certain things, whether it's a character or a scene or a storyline. So it's invigorating, and it's fun to spend this time with Jack and Libby, as I said, because it's like, in a way, getting to spend more time with them but in a new setting too. So it's giving them new adventures because there's some things that are going to be new on the screen that weren't in the book. And that's really fun to get to do.
Thank you very, very much. And I would like to add a small thing. Like when I read Breathless, I'm working at a magazine for my university right now. Like it's the magazine for the university. And
Wonderful.
Breathless made me write an article that I didn't have the courage to. And I want to say thank you for that, because I think that the books came at the right time when they have to.
Oh my gosh, thank you so much. That means everything to me.
Thank you as well.
Thank you. Thank you. Maria Sotkan, please.
Okay, hello.
Hi.
This is crazy. I am so welcome and I feel so free next to you. And I just love your soul and I just love you as a person, and you and your honesty are here in my heart, and I hear you and I love to hear you more, and I love to hear your voice and like your writing, and it really like affects me in a really good way. It's not like in a bad way. And I'm so thankful for you.
Oh my gosh, you're amazing. Thank you so much.
Cute.
All my heart.
So I have like two questions. Like it's a question, but it has like two terms. So what is your favorite part of like writing your books and the process and like the books and like the story? What is your favorite one, and what is like the most fun of it?
I think the most fun is definitely moments like this, getting to meet readers and, especially in person, like that is just, it's the best thing in the world, and getting to hear your stories and getting to see your faces and talk to you. That is the absolute best. In terms of like actually writing, I love the first drafts. I love creating the beginnings and the endings, especially endings. I love writing those. I don't like the middles as much because sometimes you just
I know.
Right?
I'm writing a book right now, and it's like a thriller, but not really. It's like a psychological thriller, and I'm like, it's a lot. It's a lot for my 40-year-old self. It's a lot.
Well, I applaud you for doing that. And
Thank you.
and that especially is very hard. And it is true. You get in the middle, and I sometimes feel like I'm just wandering in the desert. Like I just don't know what I'm doing, and it goes on for too long.
Like,
right.
So like, can I call somebody to help me right now? Like, I need ideas.
Exactly. And you just like, you're like, help. This is when you want a collaboration, because then you don't have to worry about it as much. But I do love the beginnings and the endings. And I also really love working on the characters. So before I ever like put a word on the page of the actual prose, I get to know the characters as much as I can. So that way, once I go into the story, I know what they would do and what they wouldn't do. And that really helps for me. And I really like that part of it too.
Wow, that's thank you for your answer.
Oh, of course. Thank you.
Have an amazing day and with these amazing people.
Oh my gosh, thank you.
Thank you. Nayana Tudor.
Hi, Jennifer. I just wanted to ask you, why did you stop writing historical fiction? I think I discovered that you wrote historical fiction just a few days ago, and I was so impressed. And could you make a story, historical fiction for young adult? I think it would be amazing. And thank you for writing all of the books. You're just an amazing person, and I'm so glad to be here.
Oh my goodness, thank you. I'm so glad you're here. I would love to do a historical fiction for young adults. I get historical fiction ideas from time to time. Some are adult, some could be young adult. And I have one actually that I've been thinking about recently that probably could be young adult. And so it is something that I've thought of. But this makes me think of it more. So I really appreciate that. I loved writing the series of historical novels that I wrote. It was really like, I love research. I love doing research. It's a bit like being a detective, and I always wanted to be a detective. So that's really something I enjoy. And obviously the writing that I love. So it would be, I think, it's a kind of a rambling answer to say it would be something that I would really love to do. Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you. Madalina, Cristina?
Yeah, hi. I'm just so grateful to be here. I just want to say that I love all the bright places so much, and I have two questions. First, I found Finch an extremely unique character and very different from what I've read before. And I was wondering, how hard was it to write his character, especially if it was from a boy's point of view?
Thank you so much for the lovely words, by the way. It was, it was interesting because Finch was easier to write than Violet. And Violet was more, as I said earlier, she was more me. She was more based on me in some ways, not in all ways, but some ways. And Finch was really inspired by this boy I loved. But his voice came out so strong, and it was like just there and waiting in a way. And Violet was harder to get to know. So that threw me at first because I didn't expect that. I expected Violet to be easier. Also, she's a girl, but I love writing boy characters. I really enjoy it. And it's a challenge, but it's also something I truly enjoy. I loved writing Jack and Holding Up the Universe. I think one of the things that was hardest about Breathless was not writing it from Jeremiah's point of view also. I really wanted to do that, but my publisher really wanted to see it with one voice and one character. But it's interesting because I'm thinking about the next young adult novel, and I was thinking I have an idea for it. And as I was thinking about it, I was like, thinking about it from a girl's point of view. And then the minute I switched it to a boy's point of view, I became more interested in the idea. And I was like, oh yes, I'll do that. So I have no idea how I did it, but I just really, truly enjoy like writing the male characters.
So much. And I also was wondering if you have any bright place in real life.
Absolutely. My readers are one of my brightest places. My family, my husband, my rescue cats, we have 7 of them, and home, my home.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Stefan, Philippe, where are you? Okay.
Yeah. Hi, Jennifer. It's an honor to be here. All the Bright Places has been instantly my #1 from the moment I've finished reading it. I can say with all my heart that Finch is a really important character in all of us, I mean, in all of our souls and in our hearts. And it's a representation of mental health and mental disorders. And it was really sad to see that tragic end. Under all those beautiful moments, there was still that bipolarity that kept putting pressure on him. How did it feel to write a character with mental health issues, and how could you represent it so well?
Thank you so much for all of these beautiful words, which I so appreciate. I think that it was hard at first because I did feel this great responsibility, especially because I was writing for young adults and I didn't want to get anything wrong. Now, there are so many different experiences about mental health, mental disorders, but I could only write from the experience of the boy that I loved, and knowing him firsthand, seeing him firsthand, seeing what he went through, knowing what he had gone through. And from Violet's point of view, I've experienced a lot of loss in my life, and I could write about loss, unfortunately, all day long. And so that for me really informed Violet the most, is the loss that I'd gone through. But for Finch, what I did ultimately was write out of my heart and what I knew from this boy. And then I gave the book to experts in the field of mental health. I gave it to friends or family members, colleagues who had gone through very similar things that Finch went through in the book, because I really wanted to make sure it read as authentically as possible. Because as I said, that's one of the things you feel, especially with young adults, is you want to be as responsible as possible. And I think part of that is just being as honest as possible. So I so appreciate your words about that, because I take it very seriously, and I feel very honored to get to write these kinds of issues for young people.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Finch was really the character that I resonated with, and he managed to help me to realize the things in my own point of view. And it was like I was living there, and he made me realize a lot of interesting aspects about life and how it should be lived. And
That is amazing.
thank you for coming up with this wonderful story. I mean, the story novel in the whole. Thank you.
My God. Thank you with all my heart. Truly, that means so much to me.
Thank you, Stefan. Anna?
Yeah, I have one more question, and I think I'm speaking for aspiring authors everywhere in the world here. What advice would you give to young authors or aspiring authors out there, and how can they find their voices when they think they're lost?
Beautifully put. I always say, read the story or write the story you want to read, because you will stay more invested in it. I mean, we talked about the dreaded middles of things, and that investment of passion, love, interest, whatever it is that makes you want to read the story you're creating, will keep you going throughout if you write the story you want to read. Also, just read everything. Don't limit yourself on what you read. Write, show up and write. I know so many talented authors who are terrified of writing something that isn't perfect. And you have to give yourself permission to write garbage if it is, or to write something that isn't perfect or not up to the standards that you have for yourself. Just knowing that you can go back and you can edit. And part of writing is editing, is going back over it. I also tell young people to always believe in yourself and your work. Don't ever limit your imagination. And my mom used to say, don't ever tell yourself no, because there are enough people in this world who will do it for you. So don't be one of them. And I think that kind of speaks to also that belief in yourself. And you feel like maybe you don't have a voice, but you do. And your voice, even if it's your voice and no others join you, your voice is very powerful. And you're the only you in the entire world, which makes you so unique. And that means your story is unique. And I always try to remind myself of that when I feel like, oh, that's been done, or I don't have anything to contribute to that subject. Then I remind myself, no, you're the only one who can write it the way you can write it. And we need all of your voices.
Thank you.
Daria?
Hi, Jennifer. I want to start by saying that I love your book, All the Bright Places, is one of my comfort reads. From all the characters you wrote, who is the character who you relate the most? Like, which character is your comfort character from all the characters you wrote? Sorry, my emotions just went.
Oh my gosh, no. I love this question. I think that it's really difficult to choose, but I probably relate most to Claude, I think, in Breathless. Probably, I mean, not just because she's the most recent one that I wrote, but there's so much in her love story about, that kind of comes from my husband and me. But I think more than that, for Claude, that feeling of like picking yourself back up after you lose something, after the floor disappears from beneath your feet, that is something I've had to do so many times in my life with all the loss that I've gone through. And I think that probably because of that, that speaks to me the most, because I know what that's like to have to do that so many times.
Thank you. Ioana Butulescu.
Yes, thank you a lot. So I think Stefan took a part of my question as well, because it was about mental health. So when I've read the book, all the Bright Places, I was like 14 and I had no idea about what mental health is. And I think my interpretation of the book at that time wasn't very deep. But now thinking of it, I've realized that like there are a lot of people who go through these problems. And my question would be, is there a Finch in all of us? Like when writing the book, was it aimed that it might show people that it's that having these issues is quite a problem and that there is this need to solve it? And I'm like interested in the profile of Finch, because I think it was quite a complex character with all the symbolism, and I mean his whole story was like amazing. So yeah, this would be my question, the reasons that were behind writing this character.
Thank you so much for those words. I think that for me, I mean, Finch began with this real boy, but then, as I said, he really took on this whole life of his own. And in Finch, I put a lot of emotion and feeling about people I had lost and people I loved and people I knew who were struggles I've had with the grief that I've had in my life because of all the loss. And so I feel like in that way, there is a Finch in all of us, because I also think that the ways that we relate to Finch, I feel like so many of us feel like we don't have a voice, or we don't want to burden anyone with how we're feeling. We worry about being a burden. We worry about, anyone looking at us strange or thinking that we're weird or any of those things. And I feel for me, Finch kind of encapsulated so much of that, and so much of those feelings that I feel like are universal. I mean, I've heard from readers who said, I don't have the same mental health struggles that Finch has, but he makes me feel like I know how he feels, because I don't want to tell people that I feel this way, or I feel very alone in this way, and I didn't know that anyone else felt that way. So again, that's kind of a rambling answer to your question, but he was probably, of all the characters I've written, my favorite character to write. And part of that was because there were all those layers, and there was that universal feeling to him, even though there were very specific things about him that not everyone relates to.
Thank you.
Thank you.
George?
Yes, hi Jennifer. I would like to say that my favorite book from your novels is All the Bright Places. First of all, I watched the movie, and I was thinking about the inspiration for that movie. So I made some researches, and I found the book. So I started to read. And I discovered that I have so much things in common with Finch. I discovered that he represents an old version of me. I was struggling with anxiety and depression too, so he made me go through these thoughts. And my question is, why did you make the love story between Violet and Finch with such a sad ending? I mean, he had to commit suicide. Sorry, I mean, it's really unusual for me and weird.
And that's a great question. And I thought several times about having a different ending for the book. And for me, I had to write the story that I knew in real life. That was the only story I knew to write. And it was one of the reasons I wanted to write that story to begin with, was to, kind of not just pay homage to this boy I loved, but also to remember, our relationship and remember that time period in my life. And so for me, there was only one ending, and it broke my heart to have to end it that way, but it felt right. And it's interesting because when we took the book out to movie people, there were several people who were really interested in it, but they wanted a different ending. They wanted it to have a very different ending. And there were even some book editors when I was selling the book who wanted it to have a different ending. But I just wanted to stay true to what I had lived through, because as much as it's Finch's story, it's also Violet's story. In fact, in some ways, it's more of Violet's story because she's the one who goes throughout the entire book. And so I could write, how I felt losing someone like that. And that was something I knew how to write. And one of the things that I've heard from readers since is, thank you so much for Finch and for letting me know that I don't want to end up like Finch. And I'm really happy that so many people have gotten that message, to talk about the things that they're going through, to let people in, to share what they're struggling with. And that I'm grateful for.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Before the next question, I have a message from Facebook from Delia Popescu. Your story is a powerful inspiration for all of us, and I thank you for all your beautiful words.
That's so beautiful. Thank you.
Daria Negru.
Hi, I've loved all the bright places, and I found Violet as a comfort character. And I wanted to ask you, if you could meet her one day, what would you tell her?
Oh my goodness. Thank you so much for reading and loving the book, by the way. I think I would tell her to make sure that she is living, life as fully as possible, that all of those wonderful things she learned from Finch about having 1,000 capacities inside her, that she's honoring that, and that she is not, I guess, worried about losing people in her life that she loves, but she's making the most of all the time that she has.
Thank you.
I felt like this book was very special, and it holds a special place in my heart, because I felt like I was not alone. And yes, it is special. And thank you for always encouraging people to speak up.
Oh my goodness. Thank you so much for that. That means everything. Thank you.
Rebecca Kim, please.
Hi, Jennifer. I really love your books, and I also have with me. And I wanted to ask you a question, actually 2 questions. What was the experience like when it came to developing Libby and Jack into the people they are?
That is great. Thank you so much for the question. Libby and Jack were really interesting to write, because I was touring for all the bright places when I was writing Holding Up the Universe. And because of that, I felt like Finch kept getting in the way a little bit. I feel like Finch was very territorial, and he did not want me to write Jack. And every time I would start writing Jack, Finch's voice would come out. So I made playlists for both of them. Libby was always like very strong from the get-go. I knew her voice, but Jack I had to struggle a little bit, with. And so I made these playlists for them, and then I got more of a sense of Jack, and it took me a little while to get more inside his head, but once I did, I really loved writing him. And Libby, I really so enjoyed writing because we're a lot alike, but we're also very different. So it was wonderful because it was challenging, but in a really exciting way. And I love revisiting her all over again with the script, as I said, because I just, forgot what a joy she is to write and to be around. So it was definitely, I did not expect to have to struggle with the voices like I did at the first because of Finch and Violet still being in my head. But once I did, I really loved being in Libby and Jack's world.
Thank you so much. And my second question is, what was the most difficult character to write?
Oh, who of all the characters?
Yes.
I think probably, oh my gosh. I think probably Violet. I think for the same reasons that I was saying, like it would be more challenging to hang out with Violet, even though I love her. It was harder to get to know Violet. And I think part of that is because she did keep so much inside. She had learned to just kind of swallow everything and like not talk about her sister's death, and she was harder to get to know. But then once I got to know her, I loved her, and I was, but it was just that first initial kind of, okay, Violet, let me in so I can write you.
Thank you. Back to you, Anna.
I have more of a fun question now because this conversation is really deep at the moment. So I was wondering, how does a normal, ordinary day in your life look like?
Oh my goodness. I don't think that there are any normal, ordinary days in my life, but I try to work, like do creative work every day if I can for at least a little bit. Sometimes, there's other work that comes that you need to pay more attention to and you can't get to the creative work, but I try to do at least a little bit a day because writing is so much like a muscle and you need to exercise that muscle. And part of it, the way to do that is writing. So I try to do that, even if it's just thinking about a character or, brainstorming something. I try to have that every day. Some days it's just a lot of, emails, or it's, things that I'm writing for other people, or, some sort of, kind of the business of writing. But again, I try to make time for the creative work always. And sometimes the best days are when it's just, 8 hours of creative work. That's amazing when I can lose myself in that. I try to do a workout because that helps clear my mind. And my husband and I both work at home and we have so much fun. So we'll inevitably like take a break, and like right now we're painting walls in the house and doing things like that. And that is fun to do. And it also helps clear my mind a little bit. And just, I tried to make sure there's downtime at some point because you need to be able to replenish yourself and your creative, stores. And part of that is just taking time away from the computer and really taking time to take care of yourself in whatever way that is, whether it's like watching something fun on Netflix, or having a good dinner, or taking a walk, or however that looks.
Great.
Daria Iordache, please. Could you open your mic?
Thank you so much.
First of all, if I could give you a little bit of a backstory first. So I have this friend who has recently picked up acting, and since then he's always been telling me how whenever he plays a new character, he puts a bit of his own personality into it. And I mean, he hates it because as an actor, you should be able to detach yourself from the character that you're playing. And my question is, from an author's perspective, how can you keep yourself from creating characters that resemble you?
You know, I don't think you can completely, because that's a great question, because I do think, like your friend, you end up putting little pieces of yourself into everything you do. I mean, they're pieces of me in all my characters and in all my stories, even my nonfiction work, which is, you know, those are like accounts of Arctic expeditions from 1913 and 1921. And there's nothing in there that's fictitious. It's all fact, you know, based on journals and letters and, you know, materials from that time. But I can put my heart and soul in it. There's still, you know, I look back at my second nonfiction book, and I wrote it while my dad was dying of cancer. And in the story, it's this young Inuit woman from Alaska who goes to this island with 4 young men to colonize the island. And she ended up being the only survivor, but she had to take care of one of the men as he was dying. So, you know, you put parts of yourself, even in nonfiction like that, when it's, you know, you're basically reporting the facts, you put parts of yourself in it. So I don't know that it's possible. It's certainly not possible for me. So
Thank you. Maria Teodora Ochian.
Hi, I want to say that I love your books, and I really enjoy all the bright places. Even I cried a lot, like a lot. It was heartbreaking.
So sorry.
And my question is if it was a big change for you and your life to write a young adult novel, and how did you feel when you chose to do it?
That's a wonderful question. It changed my life completely. In so many ways. As I said, it was my 8th book, but it was my first young adult book. And I had readers around the world for my other books, but it was a very different kind of readership. I love the young adult audience, the best reading audience in the world by far. I mean, the young adult audience is so discerning. They're so smart. They know if something is fake or doesn't ring true, and they are just so amazing and inspiring. And for me, I mean, I've gotten to travel the world and meet these incredible readers, like I'm meeting you all right now. And it fills my heart. And it also reminds me that I'm not alone. You know, there are so many times when we all feel that way. And my readers really, I always say, like, are my brightest places, but it's really true. And so that's really opened up my world a lot. I also realize that because I'm seeing firsthand and hearing from readers firsthand about how many young people struggle with mental health issues that aren't being addressed. And I kind of have accidentally become a mental health advocate, which is not something I intended to do with All the Bright Places, but it's certainly an honor to be doing as much as I'm doing now about it. And I take that very seriously. So it's really been a wonderful, magical, very profound, inspiring time.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Roxana Petre.
Hi, I'm probably the oldest fan in this meeting, but I wanted to say I simply love your book. I read all the Bright Places twice since the beginning of pandemic, and I wish I had this kind of literature 15 years ago when I was dealing with the same issues when I was in high school. At that time, talking about mental health was not considered healthy by my classmates, for example, and my generation was bullied a lot because of it. So I really appreciate all the young adult writers for doing this, and seeing all these young people here, it makes me really happy to see that kind of conversation going on now. Going to my question, my favorite part of the book was the one in which Theodore and Violet read the places where you'll go together. And I wanted to ask you, why did you choose this story as a reference for your title?
Oh, that's wonderful. First of all, thank you so much. And I so know what you mean, because when I was growing up, we didn't really talk about those things or have books like that. And I was very fortunate with my parents because they wanted to talk about everything. But I know that was kind of the exception with most of the people I know, and the way that, the time that I was growing up in. So I totally understand that. And I think it's interesting with the title. It was originally titled You Make Me Lovely, after the song that Finch writes Violet, but Random House wanted to change the title. They had all these different reasons for doing that. And I had to think of a new title. And for me, it was always You Make Me Lovely. So I had to I looked through lyrics, I looked through books, I looked through, poems, I looked all over the place for inspiration. And I had this long list of titles that I came up with. None of them I was really crazy about. But then I spied this book on my shelf, which is Oh, the Places You'll Go. And I just was flipping through it, and I saw the phrase that said, you'll find the bright places. And I just thought, oh, that's lovely. I love bright places. And then I was thinking, all the bright places. So I just sent them the one title, and everyone was like, that's it. That's it. So to me, it's just, that book is it was a book that I think someone had given me for college graduation, which I know a lot of people do. It's a very good gift for someone who's about to go out into the world. And it just seemed very fitting for Finch and Violet, who were learning so much about not just each other, but about the world around them and the bright places that there were to see.
I actually read it because I found it in your book, and I was curious about it. Dr. Seuss is not a big thing here in Romania, and I had to understand more about it and why this book is Theodore's favorite one. So it's also incredible.
That's wonderful.
Thank you, Roxana. Before we continue, I have to ask you, Jennifer, if you have 30 minutes more for us.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. And let's tell them about the big news about your new book with David Levitan, please.
Yes, I'm so excited. This is the first time I'm getting to talk about it, other than to my agent or my publishing house and David himself. So David, someone tweeted me a couple of years ago and said, which YA author would you most like to collaborate with if you could write a book with someone else? And I said, oh, David Levitan, for certain. He's my favorite. And David saw that tweet. Now, David is never on social media. He barely goes online. So he happened to see that, thankfully. And then about a week later, I got a chapter out of the blue from David, who emailed me and said, be careful what you ask for. So I came up with this chapter. I don't know if it, is meant to be, but if you're interested, maybe we could keep it going and see what happens. And so we just announced today that our book, Take Me With You When You Go, comes out in the end of August here in North America, August 31st. And we revealed the cover, and so it's very exciting.
Thank you. So guys, you received the worldwide exclusive news. Bianca Mana.
Hello.
Hi.
I wanted to say that you're wonderful and so talented. I'm so glad that I have the chance to tell you that your books saved my life. And All the Bright Places made me realize that life deserves to be lived at the fullest. So my question is, when you started to write, have you ever thought that your books are going to save lives?
Thank you so much for those. First of all, just thank you. Thank you. And thank you for this question too. That never occurred to me with All the Bright Places. I mean, I certainly understood the responsibility of writing it. I certainly understood the responsibility of writing something of that subject matter, but I don't think that it ever occurred to me that the book would save lives. Now, I'm so incredibly grateful that the book has had any sort of, anything to do with saving someone's life, or as I always say, you save your own life. But if the book has helped in any way, it's a huge, huge honor. And that's an understatement. I always think of the boy who inspired Finch, and I think of how, we weren't able to save him, but he, through Finch, has saved so many people. And that would have meant everything to him.
Yes. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Bianca.
Erika.
Hi, Jennifer. You look so brilliant. I just turned 14 yesterday, and it's a late birthday gift to meet you.
Happy birthday. My birthday's tomorrow.
Thanks.
And to you.
I'm so nervous, and I always wanted to talk to you because All the Bright Places saved my life too. And I read your book when I was 12. So I was a little girl, and after I finished it, I was a new person. I was very sad, and I felt empty on the inside, and your book saved my life and made me ask why. You inspire me. I want to be a writer too. Since I was a little girl, I know I knew I knew this is my biggest dream, and I'm sorry, I'm very nervous.
No, don't worry.
My question for you is, have you ever expected to become so loved and appreciated?
Oh my goodness. Well, first of all, I'm so grateful to you for sharing what you just shared. And I'm so happy to get to meet you, and happy birthday.
Thanks.
The biggest birthday hug right now. I hope that I'll get to meet all of you in person sometime. But until then, birthday hugs. And I think, the thing that I always go back to is that with All the Bright Places, which took me to like a whole new chapter of my career, it was just, it's an idea that started with this boy I loved, and it was just him and me and the page, and that's it. And that's all I thought about. And my mom used to say, like, you can't write with anyone else over your shoulder. And it's so true. And as a writer, you know that, because that can slow you down. It can make you nervous. It can, like, all these things. So I had to just kind of shut the world away. And it was just, the written page and me, and then this boy. And so I never expected anything beyond that. I never looked beyond that. So I know authors who are kind of, not that they're jaded, but they're used to, all the readers, and they're used to, and it's not that they take it for granted, but I'm like, would never be able to not just be like amazed at everything. Like I go to a book event and I'm like, oh my God, like I will cry before you will cry, and I will get like so excited, and I fangirl over you. And it's just, I never lose track of the fact that, you know, I wouldn't be where I am without all the love and all the support that my readers give me. So I try to give as much as I can in return.
Thank you for the answer, and thank you for saving my life. I love you so much.
Oh my gosh, I love you too. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Carola?
Hello. It's so nice to hear from you and see you here in person. So you've briefly touched upon my question regarding whether there was an alternative ending, but aside from that, I would be more interested if writing All the Bright Places offered you a sense of relief or closure, because I as well have unfortunately went through a similar situation, and eventually you are left with all the aftermath and the question of, was there something that I missed or could have done differently? But I think that in the end, your book just brings everything so beautifully together, and it's just the acceptance of that. Unfortunately, some people saying that they're not equipped to be in this world is not correct, because having issues with mental health and knowing people that suffer with this, I know that these people are the most courageous, and this type of decision takes years to make. So was it in a way therapeutical for you to have an ending that you can touch?
That's such a great question, and I'm so sorry that you've gone through anything similar at all. I think it was definitely very therapeutic for me, because most people, I think the thought of suicide is, when someone commits suicide, it's very hard for people to talk about it. And I think this is, you know, one of the things we were mentioning earlier about just people who don't want to talk about it. And the more you don't talk about something, the bigger it becomes. And I did not talk a lot after I lost this boy. I didn't talk a lot about the experience. And I was also the one who found him, like Violet. So it was, for me, it was such a life-changing experience, but it's not one that I felt really welcome to talk to too many people about, because it made them very uncomfortable. And my dad, I lost my dad the year after to cancer, and everyone was so sympathetic and so lovely, but it was so different from after I lost my boyfriend. And the response was so different. And so for me, All the Bright Places was really my way of getting to talk about it finally. And I didn't realize I needed to talk about it as much as I did until after I finished the manuscript. And I'll never forget the first event I did. It was before the book was even out, and a group of high school students had gotten early copies of the book and been able to read it. And a girl raised her hand, my very first question. And she said, "Do you mind talking about the real Finch?" And I froze for a minute, because no one had ever said that to me. And I thought, okay, I have a choice to make here. I can either say, no, I'm not comfortable doing that, or I can look at these teens who need me to talk about this. I've already done it in the book, and I can keep talking about it. So that's what I chose to do. And I've done that ever since. And I think that's really important. And yes, it was very cathartic, definitely.
Thank you so much for the answer. I mean, I'm now a PhD student, but I still have a copy of my book, and I make my colleagues read it, because I'm like, you don't understand. This is not young adult. This is life, and it's a lesson. And it really becomes a taboo having this experience and having people look at you differently. But something interesting, like also in your book, Holding Up the Universe, you state that at some point the whole universe just comes into focus. So in a way, for me, this book that I have with me all the time just sort of brings everything into focus more. So I just want to say thank you for all the books that you have written until young adults, and wherever you're going to write in the future. I just know that every time I need to read something, I can definitely come to you and look over your books, and I really appreciate this.
That means more than you can know. Thank you so much with all my heart.
Thank you.
Thank you. Selena?
So I hope you can hear me. I absolutely love reading, and I recently discovered I also like writing. And my mom keeps telling me, you know what, you're gonna be a writer someday. And this is why I wanted to ask you, what made you know that writing was the right career for you?
I just, listen to your mom. I think that you feel it in your, in everything you are. I think that for me, I knew that I loved to tell stories on the page. And I loved that, like, I would get so excited if suddenly, I hit on something that was like, oh, that's it. That's the idea. And then you read it afterward and you're like, oh my gosh, it's like so fun to get to read it after. And, I'll edit it, but I created this. There's that wonderful feeling of like, I did this. That's so exciting. And I think just the feeling that I've always gotten of feeling that I could just maybe not walk into a room and just say, hey, here I am. Here's everything about me that's messy or whatever, but I could put it on the page, and that was a safe place to do it. And I just loved having that outlet, but I also love being able to create stories and characters. It feels like magic. And I think that, even though so much of it is hard, it's just always the thing that I need to be doing in some way. I think it's just so much a part of you. So that's kind of how I knew. And when I kind of walked away from it for a couple of years, I still had to write a short story or two. Like, I couldn't stop it completely. And there was just too much in me that had to get out. So it's not like a very like black and white answer, but it's all those feelings that you
Thank you so
have.
much.
You're
You
welcome.
might not know this, but your answer actually, I think, is going to make a difference.
Good. Oh, I'm so glad, because I want to be able to read your book one day. So please.
Oh my God. That would be a great thing.
Yes.
Thank you. Before I let the next question on air, I must tell you, kids, that the book "Take Me With You When You Go" by Jennifer Levitan and Jennifer Niven and David Levitan was we just bought the rights for a Romanian translation, so you will enjoy it. I think maybe at the end of this year or in the first part of 2022. The next question comes from Alessia.
Yes, first of all, hi, I'm so nervous to be here. And you actually made me tear up a bit. Like, I was listening to you and I was like, oh my God, I can feel this,
Oh no.
Anyway, I want to tell you that you're an amazing person. And oh my God, I feel very great talking to you. And I wanted to ask you, because you are a person that puts so much of herself while writing. And I'm shaking, I'm sorry. And does that ever made you feel like, I don't know, anxious? Because you put a lot of things you've experienced yourself in your books, and I don't know, that would make me feel anxious, and I don't know, a bit self-conscious about it. And how do you handle it?
It is first of all, I'm sending you a hug, so you don't need to
Thank
shake
you.
anymore, and I'm so glad to meet you.
Me too.
It is such a strange feeling because you do, it's just you and the page and you pour yourself into it. And then there comes a time when you have to actually share it and put it out there. And that is so terrifying because you know that not everyone is going to love what you've done. And so once the book is out in the world, I remember a friend of mine had her debut come out a couple of years ago, and she said, what do you do about bad reviews or, like, what do you do about that? And I said, like, you have to remember that once the book is out and it's in the world and it's in the hands of the readers, it belongs to them and it doesn't belong to you anymore. And you could, I know some authors who torture themselves by just reading review after review. They go on Goodreads and they agonize and they're like, oh my God, they hate my book. They hate, and it's hard not to take that personally, but you have to just say, it's the readers now. And I don't seek out, reviews, good or bad. I just, unless someone sends it to me, I don't look at it, but I do go on social and read everyone's comments. And it's certainly, it's terrifying, but it's also, it feels really good because ultimately, you know that you're speaking with your heart to readers, to their hearts. And that is just, that's the best thing. I will tell you a quick story about the first time I ever saw a book of mine in the store. And it was on the shelf. This is my first book, The Ice Master, which was nonfiction. It was on the shelf. And I was like, oh my God, there is my baby. And it's on the shelf. And I want to scoop up all the copies and take it away from this bookstore so no one can see it because it's so like, it feels very exposed, And then this man came up and he picked up the book and he started flipping through it and he read the flap copy. And then he set it down and he walked away. And I was like, how dare you, sir, come back here and get that book. So in an instant, it changed from like, oh my God, to like, you pick up that book and take it with you.
Thank you so much. And also to lighten up a bit, what is something that you learned through the years, getting experience and things that help you very much, and you wish you knew it from the start?
Oh my goodness. I think, for writing or just in life?
Can be both.
Both. I think, just for me, I think that, and this isn't like a concrete thing, but I wish I'd learned to just not be so self-conscious, I guess, and just be more kind of, and now I feel like I'm more free to do that. But I think in high school and in college, I was much more self-conscious and always afraid that, I want to like smile and I want to like, put forth this image, or I don't want anyone to see like the tender parts. But now I'm just like, this is me. And I wish I'd learned that a little bit sooner.
Thank you. This helped me very much because I aspire to be an author and I have short stories that I'm afraid to show to anybody. Like I'm terrified of it. And it's not just because I don't know, because I might be afraid that they're bad. I'm afraid because they're part of me and it feels very terrifying to show that to somebody, and I can't imagine being an author.
If it makes you feel any better, every writer feels that way. So that just means you're a writer.
Thank you so much. You're amazing again.
Thank you.
Thank you. Christina?
Hi, I'm so grateful to meet you, and I'm nervous.
No, it's lovely to meet you. Don't be nervous.
The bright places, it's so important to me. I feel so attached to Finch because I kind of relate to him in some ways. And I want to thank you so much for writing him, because when somebody writes about it, you kind of know that you're not the only one feeling that way. And I actually have two questions for you. First is, if you could have talked to Finch, what advices would you give him and to anyone who might feel the way he did?
That's a brilliant question. I would say to him, just, open up, share how you're feeling, talk to someone, help us out there, reach out, let Violet in, let someone in there to let them know what you're going through, because you do not have to struggle by yourself. No one deserves to struggle by themselves.
Thank you. And what are some advices would you give to young writers from your own experience with writing?
I would say, don't, as we're talking about, exposing yourself on the page and feeling exposed, try not to be self-conscious when you write. Try, as I said, like, don't write with anyone over your shoulder. Just write what's in your heart and write what you feel, and don't edit yourself because you're afraid down the road of someone reading it. And also, as a writer, there are some writers I know who only write for themselves, but if you do want to write ultimately so that other people read it at some point, you do have to kind of take that breath and just say, okay, I'm going to put it out there. Start with people you really trust and love, and just start with getting their feedback. And then it's that helps. And then you move on to someone maybe you don't know quite as much. I also do want to mention, because there's so many young writers here, Germ magazine, which was in All the Bright Places, which Violet started, is a real thing. So germmagazine.com exists, and it's a literary and lifestyle magazine, and we take submissions from around the world. And right now we have a May writing challenge. That's a nice thing to enter because it's only 100 words. You're still putting yourself out there, but it feels safe. And I'm the one who reads them. So you don't have to worry about anyone else reading them. And then if you don't want to be published, you don't have to be. But, if you do, it's a lot of writers, authors who've gone on to write books that have been published started at Germ. And so I'll just put that out there just in case you ever want to share.
Thank you so much. I'm so grateful talking with you.
Thank you. It's lovely to talk to you.
Thank you. Andrea?
Hello, I hope my mic is working.
Yes,
it's working.
I'm really happy to be here. I also want to talk about All the Right Places. It's a very important book to me. I kind of made this tradition of reading it every year, so I can see how much I've changed from the past year, and also see what kind of things I can also discover about the book. And there are a lot of things I can discover every year, so it also helped me with some of my friendships, because I have some friends that I talk with about the book, so it kind of makes our friendship stronger, I guess. I wanted to say that I really appreciate the way mental health is represented in the book, because it's just in a honest way, and the emotions are just being put there without romanticizing it and making it feel awkward for the people that also struggle reading it. And I wanted to ask if it's hard, if it was hard to portray it the way it is.
Definitely. And thank you so much for reading the book every year. That's amazing. I think that, as I've mentioned about the responsibility you feel, I think that's, always foremost in my mind is especially when writing stories about mental health. I definitely want to be as responsible as possible. So that was always foremost in my mind. And I always knew that I wanted to give it to, experts in the field or people who had gone through the exact same thing, so that they could read and tell me what their experiences were, if it read true to them, because I know mental health and, especially like depression and loss and the things that Finch was going through specifically look very different on different people. And it's, one person's journey is going to be very different from someone else's. So I knew that it's not that I could, like capture everyone's journey across the board, but what I could do was capture Finch's based on the boy I loved. And through him, hopefully open a door to other people seeing themselves in him and his experiences. Hopefully that answers your question.
Yes, thank you a lot for it.
Thank you. Alexis Roșu.
Yes, I hope my mic is working.
It is.
Yeah.
I recently started reading All of the Bright Places. I didn't finish reading it, but one question I have is, what did you learn when writing the book? Like, is there any new information that you have learned while writing it? Sorry, or like research that you have done that you wouldn't have known if you wouldn't have started writing the book?
I think that, I think there are always new statistics and new information about mental health that, certainly the book came out in 2015. So it's been a few years now, which feels very strange to me. It feels like it was just yesterday. There's nothing, I think the thing probably that is the most profound in terms of what I've learned is that the real life Finch's home life was more similar to the fictitious Finch's than I knew. And I don't think I realized that exactly, because I tried to create some distance since he was inspired by a real person and he does have family members who are still here. I tried to put some distance between Finch on the page and the real life boy. And I didn't know that I just somehow, some of that is very, very similar. So I learned that. I also learned, just on a kind of lighter note, that the wonderful people who built the roller coaster in Indiana have had to dismantle it because so many people were coming from all over the world to ride the roller coaster. And I've become good friends with John and Sharon. And I was like, no, not the Blue Flash. And they said, yes, we finally had to take it apart. And but they still love meeting people who come visit them.
Thank you, Alexis.
Thank you.
We just had 90 minutes of happiness, of joy, of confessions, of I don't know, it was wonderful. And you are wonderful to be here with us today. And
this has been absolutely amazing. And the questions are fantastic.
Yes,
Thank you so much.
They are great. I am very happy. I am honored to be the host for these meetings. Now I just send them the link for the Germ magazine.
Good. Thank you.
Send you pieces of writing, and guys, for the ending, I will ask you to open your mic and let's sing happy birthday to you for Jennifer and Erika.
That's amazing.
So, would you open your mics?
Of course.
Yes.
Okay.
A truly beloved birthday I wish to you. We have a wonderful day tomorrow.
Thank you so much. This is so beautiful.
Yes, you brighten up our nights, and I hope you're just as happy as we are.
Oh, I can't stop smiling. I will be
like me too.
It definitely made our day.
Yeah,
for sure. You definitely made mine, all of you. I just love all of you and appreciate you all so much.
You're amazing. Like, you're truly amazing.
Happy birthday, Jennifer. May you bring light to us as these books. I mean, may we bring light to you as you have brought light to us through these books.
You are. All of you are. You are definitely my bright, bright places.
I'm quoting you from your book. You wrote, "We do not remember days, we remember moments." So I'm wishing you very, very happy moments tomorrow and remember us.
Oh my God.
Yes, don't forget us.
I will never forget you. Never.
Love you all so much. Wishing you the brightest birthday ever. And all the best. Thank you.
Oh my gosh, thank you.
Thank you. So, do we sing a happy birthday to Jennifer or not?
Yeah,
What are we
sure,
doing
sure.
here?
Yes, sure.
So, let's do it.
It's amazing.
Happy birthday
Birthday
to
to
you.
you.
Happy
Happy
birthday
birthday
to you. Happy birthday, dear Jennifer. Happy birthday
to you.
Ah, beautiful.
Happy birthday.
Happy birthday. You have my whole heart.
Birthday.
Thank you.
Everybody.
Thank you so much. Happy birthday. I hope you're gonna have the best day ever.
It is already, it feels like my birthday, getting to spend this time with you all.
You're
Thank you,
just a lovely
Jennifer, for
soul.
everything.
It's amazing. It's amazing.
Oh, thank you. It's
So-
amazing for me.
So we are expecting you in Romania, and this is the most serious invitation I have ever made.
Oh my
Yes,
gosh.
like I
I'm
really
excited.
hope to meet you like in person.
I do too. And I will tell you, I've always dreamed of coming to Romania. I've heard it's so beautiful. And so as soon as I'm able, I will be there.
Thank
Yes, please.
Thank you.
You're welcome here.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. Have a good night. And see you tomorrow with Rachel Cohn, David Levitan at 8, and at 9, John Green. So see you tomorrow night. Thank you so
Jennifer.
much.
Thank you,
Thank you,
Jennifer.
Jennifer.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.